to move this across.
Yes, for the clicker.
Yep.
Yeah, let's see if that works. Hello, everyone. Yeah, it's true the landscape is moving really fast. So doing the state of the industry, like my talk will be obsolete after today, but it's fine. At least it's really relevant for now, right? So yeah, really glad to be there to share this research that we have been conducting for quite a long time with a lot of data, a lot of results, and that will be actually open and available. So, but just this day two, I'll just ask you a question like, who was there at day one? Okay, I should have asked like, who is there only for day two? Okay, a few people there. It's great. Who has a more technical background here in the room? Okay, the other one probably business too, right? But we can be both, right? It's fine. We can have a different interfaces, right? Okay. Who works for a vendor technology? A vendor, technology vendor? Yeah. Who works for a large organization like more than 5,000 people? You know, banks or insurance. Who work for startups? Some, yeah. Some guys in big corporations think their work is like a startup. No, it's not the case. It's not the case. Yeah, perfect. So who am I? I'm the founder of Apidays conferences. 10 years ago, I gathered some guys from a Twitter list and from a Google group to meet, and finally we have 10 events a year in 10 different countries. You can follow me at Medjaoui, right? It's not how my last name is spelled, but at least the English pronunciation like is the correct one with the real one. Interfaces, right? A few publications. So I'm the author, co-author of some books. Like the one of these is Continuous API Management. It's a second edition, right? So you can find it on O'Reilly. Also a report for the European Commission about like APIs for government. Why, how, and what. Also another one about GDPR portability, like how we can transfer personal data when there is no API and we ask the law, by the law, to ask the data from a company to other. In few words, it doesn't work. APIs are needed, right? So again, all what you will see here, you can already download it, or you will be able to download it after the conference, the API landscape set of the market. This is the link, but again, it will be accessible. I will share it on social networks. And also what you will try to discover today is like this landscape, right? I will go back later on it. But yeah, so it's the 1,100 API tools, right? The platform, the software, open source or closed source that we can use to design, develop, build, test, deploy, secure, manage, monitor, version, discover, all the different aspects there. And you will see we have an online version that is interactive. You can search, you can click, browse. We'll do a demo right after. Again, just a quick explanation about the blocks, but we will dive more into that later, right? Like from the API lifecycle platforms, the bulk backend big deal tools, API as a product, integration platform as a service, or aggregator or abstractions. Yeah, but let's see what does that look like later in the talk. The summary of what I will share today, it will be about the API mindset, how we can develop the API mindset, how regulation are having impact on it and for organization. How some industries are specializing into developing their own solutions, right? How the market is unbundling. We have different new practices. Security, privacy are kind of splitting from general API lifecycle. We will see that. We will see that APIs are really a new business infrastructure. Like now, for most of the thing you will look for, there's an API for that. The last one, we will embrace and try to understand the no-code, low-code platform, how, as an organization, we can embrace citizen developers and not only the technical developers, right? OK, so let's dive into the API mindset for the next 10 years. I will share you like 4 main ideas I think that can help you to inspire other leaders in your organization about the API mindset. The first one is that an API is as much exposing capabilities as much as hiding capabilities, right? I often take the comparison of a menu of a restaurant. A menu of a restaurant, it doesn't expose you the kitchen. It doesn't expose you what the cook can cook. It doesn't expose you the list of ingredients. It exposes you a selection of what we have prepared for you that you can order and we can serve to you, that we can deliver to make you live the best dining experience, right? And you can see according to some cultures, the menus are different, For example, in France, where I come from, this is where we invented the menu, like appetizer, entree, dessert. Like, doesn't make any sense. It's completely made up, right? In some other place of the world, we give you a list of all what's available, right? You have the meats, and you have with all the different sauce, and you have the fish with all the different sauce and everything. So again, it's about what experience we want to make you live, how you will access to it, how you will order it. That's already an experience. So the menu is as much exposing as much as hiding, right? In some other countries, you go in a place, you have a menu, and actually nothing is available. At least really few things are available. But we will talk about that for the performance aspect. So I love this advertisement from Lego, right? The building bricks company, right? What do you see? We see Lego bricks, but actually, children or adults who kept a child spirit, we see the shadow of it. We see what we want, right? We see the representation of the building brick. So when you make an API to access a service, which is, for example, the weather data, okay, some people will use it to know, like, if they need an umbrella. But some business people will use it to know, like, do I need to staff more people this weekend if it's the good weather or not? So that's a different aspect, a different approach. It's always a representation. So we believe it's natural in what we ship, the service we build, but actually for the consumer, it's completely different. For the consumer, will put himself or herself, a representation that he will use for his business. And this is why we call the API mindset, is that how we can build services with interfaces that inspire people to build for their own use case. We can't know all the use cases possible, right? We can't describe every use case. No. How can we let go so people are inspired by the use case, right? So that fits with their need, right? So that's really the idea. The second idea I want to share is that embedded is a lot more stronger than to be open. In Australia, you have the CDR open banking regulation. Europe, it was PSD2. In UK open banking. We said to managers like open banking, you will open the bank, and the manager said what? Whoa. We have been told for the last 4 years to be closed, secured, and the business was to capture the customer and the value, and now we need to be open. Many managers took back and say, whoa, no, we don't want to invest into that. We'll just respect the regulation. But what we found is that actually if you shift the mindset, you say, no, the goal is not to be open. The goal is to embed the value proposition into everywhere it makes sense. Maybe banking capabilities are great for e-commerce. They're great for travel website, when you want to pay maybe buy now, pay later a trip or whatever. So now the goal is to embed, to colonize. The goal is to expand our reach outside our own channels or outside our own walls, right? That's a completely different mindset, right? And so businesses now are approaching and trying to go beyond regulation by opening APIs, right? Not just respecting regulation, being open. No, we want to embed our value proposition everywhere it makes sense. So this is often what we say in the API conferences, right? To be digital in the 2000s, you needed a website. The 2010s, you needed to be mobile. You needed a mobile application. So that was your main channels that you control. But with APIs, now the goal is to be in everybody else's website or everybody else's mobile application. Like horizontal colonization, right? Where it makes sense. If you're an insurer, you want to be in all travel applications or hotel booking. You want to be in a car dealership or renting or whatever. You want to be everywhere, and you don't have the marketing budget to advertise to all these channels. So what you will do, you will give the capability to people who are actually advertising to these people. They will consume your capability. Everything is fine. Everybody is secure. Yeah, the API mindset. Whoa. OK. Second time. Yeah, it's dinosaur, the Lego dinosaur, right? OK, let's go. Let's see, right? But you get this idea, right? The third idea I want to share with you to understand the landscape and what will be happening is that reuse is a lot more difficult but more powerful than just use, right? When you try to make people reuse something, so to understand what you've built, put themselves some intelligence, right, and reuse it for others, it's quite hard. It's really quite hard. Just an example, for people who play Legos here, right, who loves having instructions? OK, some people, right? And who love having the Lego bricks without instructions? Yeah, some people. So this is exactly the thing right here. Some people would just want to use, they want to consume the instruction, they want to read it, use the Lego bricks. But when you don't have the instructions, again, you are open to every possibility, but the result is not so great, at least in my family. No, but the thing, yeah, but you see, it's reuse, it's really hard. You have to put some intelligence, you have to think about it, you have to try to get a good result, right? So it's really hard. And in APIs, it's the exact same thing. You have built something, right? But you don't have, you probably not have built a UI on top of it, an application to consume it. So you will have to inspire developers to reuse and rebuild a new UI on top of that, right? So a good developer experience is to enable a good user experience, but made by someone else. For that, I will just give you a historical element here. In a book in 1951, the preparation of programs for electronic digital computer, like almost the first one, called the EDSAC, right? One of the first one. And they were not talking, they were calling subroutines, right? The ability to reuse a software that has for different hardware, right? So it was really, really the early stuff, right? And and they quote that in the book, right? It should be pointed out that the preparation of a library subroutine, so a software we can reuse, right, require a considerable amount of work. This is much greater than effort merely required to code the subroutine in simplest form, okay? The preparation is harder than the code, right? However, even if it has been coded and tested, there still remains a considerable task of writing a description so that people not acquainted with the interior coding can nevertheless use it easily. This last task may be the most difficult. They were saying that like, whoa, this is like, okay, we need to know what's going on here. This is 70 years ago. They were already knowing, it was the first one, the first software we could reuse, say, oh my God, it's really, really hard to reuse, right? Building it is easier. This is why you have challenges with API documentation, developer portals, like how we can make people reuse what we've built, not just come before and use. So yeah. And again, this is the down of times of the software industry. Right? So what does that mean? That means that the service you will deliver via an API has an intrinsic value. Okay, let's say the green, the API value, right? The business value. But the effort to integrate it will depend if people will integrate it or not. So if the effort is too big for the value, integration will never happen. This is a little bit what we have seen with the web service era, right? It was quite difficult, not so many conventions. You have to dive into too much documentation. I will rebuild, not reuse, right? So that was the idea. But if you're able to make a great developer experience with good standards, conventions, helper libraries, and everything, actually even an API with lower value can actually be consumed by a lot of people. I'll just take an example here, completely not related to software. I take the example of restaurants. So menu, restaurants, Lego bricks, yeah, a lot of metaphors. But sometimes we don't, at lunch, we are busy, we need to eat fast. We don't go to the best restaurant. We don't go to the restaurant who delivers the best food all the time. We also go to the more convenient ones. This is the effort, right, that you see in green, right? The developer experience is exactly that. If the effort is low, people will prefer sometimes consuming something that has lower value, but that can be consumed in 9 days versus something that has a higher value, but that will be consumed and integrated in 9 months, right? So you have really to understand that it was a sentence from Marshall McLuhan. The medium is the message. The medium is the message. Sometimes the way you deliver it is more important from what you deliver. Fast foods. It's easy, it's cheap, it's tasty, kind of, right? But people consume it because it's so convenient in many considerations. Versus we know it's not the best place to eat, right? So understand that the convenience actually makes some winners, and we will see some companies like Twilio, Stripe, and others. They were not having the best service, the best payment service, or the best telecommunication service. They were the most consumable, right? So let's remind that for the landscape. So again, this is what happened exactly in the classic manufacturing industry. At some point, when people specialize into doing things that are just do one thing, right? It will be easier to assemble them versus rebuild them all, right? So that's really this idea of the unbundling aspects, right? I was talking earlier. And so what does that mean? That means we're talking about channels. So this is an example of channels, right? You have the web, mobile channels, the web channels, right? But then you have the long tail of all the channels that it was really costly to address because you had to make the integrations, ERP integrations, connected device, marketplaces, whatever. And when it was really costly, and it took time, a few months, years to integrate, you could not address them all. You kept your own channels as a business. But now, with APIs and great developer experience, what happened? You can integrate with more of them. And sometimes your third-party channels actually can be bigger than your main channels. And what happened here is that the long tail is actually when there is no competition. Everybody fights, advertisement for their main, just an example of banks. Use my application or use my mobile application, website applications. But if you are embedded everywhere else, people where other banks are not, at the end, you will be able to conquer some spaces, right, that where other are not. And so like this, you will accumulate value over time. This is what we call the blue ocean strategy, right? So for people who are familiar, who did MBAs and stuff like that, don't fight in red oceans where everybody's fighting for the fish. Fight in blue ocean where there is no one, right? And you can fish quietly, right? And so the last one before the landscape is really, don't think what the best business model is for APIs, but what are the best APIs for your business model, right? So many organizations, when they open API, they say, we want to monetize it for public APIs. We want to monetize it. Why? Maybe there is more value by giving APIs access for free, let developers build applications that will grow your marketplace. And with a great marketplace, sometimes it's easier to sell the main product, right? You remember a connected device? I don't know if you remember the Fitbits, They were having a marketplace of applications. Or one of the main examples is Salesforce CRM. The Salesforce AppExchange, I think it's 4,000 or 5,000 business applications. You can make the best CRM possible feature-wise. At the end, people will not buy the CRM. They buy the CRM plus the 5,000 applications, right? The first really to understand that was like Steve Jobs with the Apple App Store. When Nokia, at some point, you were not buying just a phone. You were buying the ecosystem of applications. So maybe opening APIs monetizing can be great, but maybe the best strategy is to let people build on top of it to give value to your platform. Maybe the best business model is to fasten integration with partners and suppliers, right? So you can have a better supply chain management and everything. So not always think the best APIs should be all monetized, right? I was working with a European bank. Their goal was to have enough applications so the bank's user will actually prefer the mobile app of the bank because of all the ecosystem around it. So at the end, their main business model was to sell a credit card and mortgages, and they wanted to keep the same business models, but they said APIs will help us to do more of that, right? So APIs, we talk about API business models sometimes, but again, what are the best APIs for your business model more than what are the best business models for APIs? It comes from a book called Platform Revolution from Marshall Van Alstyne, who actually demonstrated, I don't know if you can read here, but like companies who have open APIs with a strategy to support this API opening, right? In average, in terms of revenue, it's a study over 10 years. For a company over $2 billion valuation, so it's not startups here. They found that in average, they were able to generate 68% more revenue, right? Reduce the cost, but the net income at the end was, in average, like 38%. Why? Because what he called, you revert the firm. By opening your company via APIs, other people will come, consume, deliver on their own channels, and actually your company is bigger than the direct investment that you have, right? So you have this ecosystem footprint or this platform approach, right? So that's the idea. Doesn't mean if you open APIs it will work, but it will work only if you open APIs, right? The drawback of this is that, yeah, the hack risk. He showed that after 2 years of public APIs, 13% of companies had an important data breach. When you are open, like people come to generate value, but some people try to come to steal value. So there is a drawback, but as long as you secure enough, you can compensate for whatever revenue you make. So this is a little bit economist approach, but it took the company who opened APIs versus the company who did not and checked valuation difference, right? So you can see there is a clear aspect when a company adopts an API strategy and decide to go full on APIs with the right approach, right, versus company who doesn't on the same market and the same kind of product, right? So we can see quite a shift, right? So again, why so much? Why so much difference? I love this matrix from Marshall. You have the people in software, internal and external. So the people internal to your company or your employees, right? The people external to the companies are the crowds, right? You know, people outside, the ecosystem, consultants, whatever. But the software inside your company is an algorithm, so that Marek was talking yesterday in keynote. But what are the external software that enable you, the crowd of your company, that enable you to scale? That's the APIs, right? So imagine, like, we talk about crowdsourcing, crowdfunding. Imagine APIs as a way to embrace the crowd and bring value to our organization, right? So this is why we see these numbers. OK, so after these elements for the next 10 years, let's dive into the landscape, right? So I'll just show you like a little bit, really few seconds, like what does that look like? Because it's not, you know, everybody is, most of the time do landscape in a way that, you know, it's like flat and everything. So this one like is live, right? This one is live, and you can check, for example, if you check a company here, and you click, you can have all the infos that we gathered from LinkedIn, Crunchbase, whatever, and you can have like, we check blog posts, we check a lot of things. GitHub repository, velocity, developers adoption, and stuff like that, right? So it's a landscape you can browse, definitely. I'll just go back here. And you will see it's decomposed in many aspects. You have a search engine, and you can also download the map here to have a poster at home, right? But just to tell you, so I invite you to go there and look. I will share the link right after. But again, it's a landscape you can browse. And so to tell you, this is the numbers. All the numbers I will share come from actually this landscape. And maybe your company is there, right? So if the data is not accurate, you can update the data. So again, I put this picture just to remind it maybe look like the same. And if we go back, so we divide it into 5 main categories. The first one is API lifecycle platforms. So API management, API gateways, API whatever security stuff. The second one is backend big data tools, right? That we've gathered. The third one is API as a product. Some people call them business process as a service, right? So that's also another naming for that. The fourth one is really integration platform as a service, you know, like iPaaS, I sometimes call it, or SDKs, companies and stuff like that. And the last one is a vertical API abstraction or aggregators. So this is an API tooling landscape, right? It's not all the APIs there. It's an API tooling landscape. So that will help CIOs and API program managers to pick and choose what tools that are open. The total landscape today represents 174 billion of investment, right? US dollars, right? So it's quite significant, mostly on API lifecycle. But still, it's quite important. It represents, just to tell you, like there are 260,000 jobs opening of the last 3 months, right? You know, so it's really, there's a lot of velocity, right? Even when some companies are firing, you know, like the Silicon Valley is firing a lot of companies, a lot of people these days. Again, the API industry like still remain quite dynamic. And so the goal is to see what trends we can see from this landscape. This is a famous Silicon Valley quote. There are 2 models, bundling or unbending. And this is exactly what we have seen in the landscape. I don't know if you know this XKCD drawing. I don't know if you can read. If you go on the top left, I wish these software parts could communicate more easily. Oh, on the right, this new technology makes it easy to create arbitrary connections into integrating everything. Great, we make connections. We go down. Oh, there are too many connections. It's creating bugs and security holes. Left. Oh, the new technology makes it easy to enclose arbitrary things in secure sandboxes. And infinite loop, right? And you never stop. So this is the history of software, mainframe, you know, like application, CRM, ERPs gathering everything, services to try to decouple everything, right? This is the history of software, right? This is exactly. But this is exactly what we've seen in the API management industry. So API management is still quite a market that's quite, which has a 28% compound annual growth rate. So it's quite good. They hire, they make revenues. But also we've seen a lot of consolidation. So some companies are here. I've seen this consolidation, many acquisition, you know. Broadcom has acquired CA, who had acquired Layer 7 before, who had acquired Runscope and Veracode. So there is really a lot of consolidation. But what happened, we said there are two business models, bundling and unbundling. When the ecosystem has bundled for the last 10 years, now it's time for unbundling. So this is what we see, a new open source stack, right? So Gravity, Kong, Solo, they're a sponsor here. Nginx, 3Scale also a sponsor here. Tyke, WSO2 also there, you know. So WSO2 has been there for a longer time, but still, we still see quite a traction of a new unbundling aspect, especially open source, right? Especially open source. And these companies raised quite a lot of money. Gravity, 30 million recently. Kong, like 150 million. Nginx has been acquired by F5 Software. Solo, 130 million. So it's quite some velocity. So yeah, about API management, what's the direct impact? The direct impact is that because now we have a major API management market, some regulation come into the game and are reshuffling the cards, right? And tell me on the time is good. So yeah, I just took some examples. You have PSD2 in Europe. You have a CDR in Australia. Hong Kong has also, like, there are many, many regulations out there. You can see an example here. But now they're obliging API management industry to specialize into some parts, you know. So this is what we see. Banking is one of them. We see insurance, logistics, right, who are, in some countries, have dedicated API regulations. So now some solutions are directly specializing into that. Healthcare, also, I forgot healthcare, but it's true that the FHIR standard, right, enable also like to have interoperability in the healthcare ecosystem. Like now many vendors have specialized API management solutions. Also personal data, you know, GDPR or Australian Privacy Act, as you have here, again, is obliging worldwide companies to think in terms of APIs, right, and to have new tools for the new stack that is needed. Just the last 6 months trend, just an example. In Europe, a new Data Governance Act. There's a proposed European health data space via FHIR APIs. Again, these standards are approaching, so many vendors are building tools especially for that. In the US, you have like open banking who is coming, right, there about what they call account switching by API. The Access Act, the right of interoperability between all services. In Brazil, like new open insurance regulation. So many, many countries are adopting regulations and vendors are making specific solutions for that. So as a specific industry solution emerge, in the landscape, you will be able to see some parts explaining exactly that in the landscape. Right, a few examples also to continue. WSO2 just got an investment from Goldman Sachs. So Goldman Sachs, the company, invested into WSO2, 90 million to say, look, we need more industry-specific solution for the financial market. So just to give you some example, Sensedia, it's a Brazilian vendor, but has now launched specific insurance solutions in Brazil. So just to give you a hint about how it's moving, right? The next 10 years will be specialized, right, because of the commoditization we talked earlier. The trend number 3 we can see is that security is now a standalone market. This is now the unbundling part, right? Usually security was part of API management, you know, like policy and security, right? But we see, like for the recent DevSecOps approach, what we call the shift left, shield right capabilities, and the fact that web application firewall are not enough for new threats, especially since COVID, right, where hackers have got some new approach. We've seen a really API security arms war with an arms race that's heating up. Just to name some company like Traceable, No Name, 42Crunch, Whip Security, Salt Security, it's a total of $300 million that have been raised last year to build API security on top of existing management solutions. On top, not. Of course, all the vendors say, no, we are secure, you don't need these. And they say, no, you need us on top. Again, the market will decide, but just to tell you that there is this tension really these days. Security is trying to be a standalone part of products. Unbundling, right? And so it's a SALT security survey, but I don't know if you can see, but for 30% of people, sensitive data exposure and privacy incidents are extremely important. And this is what we see. We see a new product dedicated to privacy. At Apidays New York 3 months ago, someone made an announcement for Privacy Gateway. So an API gateway that checks also privacy regulation, just to give you about what's happening. The trend number 4 is that APIs now are products, and they are a new layer of business and infrastructure, definitely, right? Many companies now, they say, okay, is there an API for that? We should look for a company who does that, deliver via an API instead of building it ourselves. I love this quote from Jeff Lawson from Twilio. The world is getting broken down into APIs. Every part of the stack of business that the developer might need to build is eventually turning into APIs that the developer can use, right? Right? So everything, building bricks everywhere. You remember this again, right? Subliminal messages, right? So this is the idea. In the landscape, you will be able to see we took a selection of like almost 400 tools. There are more than that, but it's just to give you like how it's decomposed, right? There are thousands and thousands, right? But we took you for your selection that you can roast, which are the most emblematic. So you may know a few, like Stripe or Twilio, Adyen, Plaid, SendGrid, Avalara, like these kind of companies who just took a service that was at the beginning not as good as the one on the market, but more consumable. Developer loved them, developer consumed them, build with it, and so at the end they're worth now more than the competitors they had, right? You know, like just an example, Stripe worth like $105 billion. You know, it's almost like the size of I don't know, probably I don't know Australian bank valuation, but at least for European, it's twice the highest valuation bank of Europe. Just to give you a hint, right? You know, it's a 10 years old company. Again, they were just doing APIs on top of other people's services. So the APIs are no products. You really need to understand that. And this is what we call the API as a product mindset, right? When there is a lot of tension, when it's a commodity market, the way you consume is sometimes more important than the value you deliver. So you can see now every industry, like just an example here on banking, can be as a service. And so many companies now just do one part, one building brick. They do payments, fraud detection, issuing card, the KYC. And so now everybody can be a bank. There is a European company called Solaris. They say you can be a bank with 100 users. The smallest bank you can build with their tool is 100 users. You can have your own family bank if you want at some point, right? You just integrate a few APIs. You pay them, I think, $19 a month for the license of a user. They even give you the banking license, right? So it's really banking as a service, right? And you can open a bank for $1,900 a month, right? You have your own bank with your own name and your coat of arms or whatever you decide. Also, on top of that, it's also enabled because we have new conventions and new standards. OpenAPI, Async API, gRPC, JSON Schema, JSON-LD, GraphQL. You name them, right? You name them. So Istio, for example, for the really backend part. But this open source also aspect is really important because it enables also like everybody to rely on the same tools, right? I'll just go on trend number 5. We want to respect the time. The trend number 5 is really the low-code aspect. You know, I think it's an IBM study. Like in the next 3 years, at the end, we will have 55% of API consumers who will be citizen developers, like non-technical users, right? And so you can know some tools like Zapier, Retool, AppSheet, that has been acquired by Google APG for $2 billion, right? You know, to remix API management. So API management is mixing with no-code tools, right? Just to tell you, in the US, they had a no-code day, right? In Europe recently, a company, Allegria, do no-code bootcamp. Doesn't make any sense. Code bootcamps, we understand it, right? But no-code bootcamp. So in 3 months, you learned how to no-code. So you're, right? You are a no-coder. You know, you see. But again, with Notion, with Make, with some platforms where you can drag and drop stuff, right? This is real. So, you know, some people will be no-coder, right? I no-code Node.js, I no-code Python, right? But I code Notion, I code other type of platforms. That also gives a lot of security issues because people are not aware of scopes. They give Airtable, for example. They give access to every part of the Airtable database, not database, but at least, you know, access. Like, you know, so we need also to train these to understand like software concept, but still. And it's true that in few months, they're able to build some business applications, right? And so they will not have to ask the IT teams stuff. They hate asking IT team stuff because IT teams love to say no, right? But at least they don't say no to say no, right? They just say no to know if it's really important. Just, you say no once, they don't get back to you, okay, it was not important. If they come back, okay, we do it. So just to finish, API management market growing really fast, enabling, so being a commodity, enabling new open source tools to unbundle this market. Regulation and enforcing the use of APIs, the publishing and the use, are creating new product opportunities to get back value on top of it. Because of this, we have a specialization of API management in industry where most of the time regulation-driven. Banking, healthcare, supply chain, insurance, right? Because of also rapid COVID digitization, but API security now try to be a standalone product. So sometimes you may have debates internally. So we have API management. Do we need also to secure that with other API security tools, the unbundling aspect, right? APIs are a new business infrastructure, are building bricks that you can integrate. So always think about what company I integrate, what API I consume to reduce my roadmap. And last but not least, citizen developers are the next API users and consumers. So again, don't forget them when you build APIs. Sometimes you can build widgets or we build stuff or integration or automation triggers, to be able to have them to consume you as much as the developer do. Again, that was it. You can download the landscape. You can check the landscape live on apilandscape.apiscene.io. APIscene is a media platform for APIs. And again, I hope it was insightful to open day 2. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mehdi. We've got some time for questions.
Yeah,
so
I'm
wondering if anyone in the audience has got some questions about Mehdi's talk.
So the research is available, the landscape is open, you can access the data and make also some conclusions on your own if you think our conclusions can be improved.
So while people are thinking, I've got a question about the last point about citizen integration. I think we've been waiting for citizen integration for a while, and I have seen progress over the years. How real is citizen integration? I guess there's 2 different venues for that. There's public APIs, and then there's internal, if you like, enterprise APIs. Where do you see that going?
So again, so external, the main example is Zapier. It enables a lot of marketing people to get some connections, integrations, without the need of asking the IT teams, right? It's $1.5 billion revenue, right? $1.5 billion in revenue, and they raised 1.3 million. So it's really a company that makes revenue, like it's rare in Silicon Valley. But they are doing a lot of revenue, and they have few. I think they have like 20 million users, right? So it's quite serious. And AppSheet integration with AppBG and Google try to do the same internally, right? Try to do the same internally. So it's real. It's real. It doesn't work perfectly. But yeah, many companies are moving to Notion platform, Airtable. So it's really coming, but it will pass. It will be accepted in organization if security teams are able to monitor what's done. So now you can see there are specific consulting companies who do no code for enterprise. Like they're able to tell you that no code for enterprise because it's real.
Yeah. I think no code inside the enterprise has got a lot of potential because so many people have difficulty building internal apps, right? They need to build them quickly and cheaply, but then often I think they're scared of the potential lock-in. So how many Lotus Notes apps are out there still, right?
But the thing is, a lot of people, so the main tool used by business people is Excel or spreadsheets. Yeah. So this is why a lot of people believe the spreadsheet will be actually the core of all the business applications. There is a famous Silicon Valley saying that every Excel sheet in a large organization can be a successful startup. So this is the same idea. So some people believe it will be the core of all the integrations of business type of application.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Okay. Nothing from the floor. Okay. Well, I guess that's a wrap.
Thank you,
Mehdi.